Ethan was walking home after a long day at work when he saw her for the first time. A young woman was standing in the middle of the street, looking lost. Her hair, a strange shade of silver, hung around her shoulders in loose waves. Her clothes were torn, and she looked out of place, as if she didn't belong in this world at all. Ethan paused for a moment, unsure if she was in trouble or if he was imagining things. He had never seen anyone like her before. As he walked closer, he could tell she was nervous, her hands shaking slightly as she stood there, staring at the ground. She didn't look up when he stopped in front of her, but Ethan could see the fear in her eyes. Her skin was pale, almost as if she hadn't seen the sun in days. Ethan's heart went out to her. He was a kind person, always willing to help, but there was something about this woman that made him feel uneasy. Still, he couldn't just walk away. "Hey, are you okay?" Ethan asked gently. His voice was calm, hoping to offer her some comfort. The woman looked up, her eyes wide and bright, like the moon, but there was a sadness in them. She took a step back, as if she didn't know whether to trust him or not. Ethan's hand hovered in the air for a moment, unsure of what to do. He didn't want to scare her. I don't know where I am," she said, in a soft, shaky voice. Her accent was unfamiliar, not quite like anything he had ever heard before. "I don't have anywhere to go." Her voice was low, almost like she was speaking to herself more than to him. Ethan frowned. She wasn't asking for help in the usual way, but it was clear she needed it. He glanced around, wondering if anyone else had seen her, but the street was empty. It was just the two of them. "You're on Earth," Ethan said, trying to make her feel more comfortable. "Where are you from? Do you need me to call someone?" The woman shook her head quickly. "No," she whispered. "I don't have anyone. I'm alone." Her voice cracked at the last word, and Ethan could tell she was struggling to hold back tears. It hit him then. This wasn't just some lost tourist or confused traveler. There was something more going on. She wasn't from around here, that much was clear. Ethan felt a mix of pity and concern rise in him. She needed help, and if no one else was going to help her, then it was up to him. He thought for a moment, trying to come up with a solution. He was just a regular guy, not a hero or someone with special powers. But Ethan had always believed in kindness, and in that moment, he knew what he had to do. "Look," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "You can come with me. I'll help you. I don't know what's going on, but you don't have to be alone." The woman seemed to hesitate, as if she wasn't sure if she could trust him. Ethan's heart raced as he waited for her response. He didn't know why, but he felt a strong pull to help her. Something about her seemed so vulnerable, and he didn't want to see her suffer. After what felt like an eternity, the woman nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll come with you." Ethan let out a breath of relief. He wasn't sure what he was getting into, but he knew that helping her was the right thing to do. He turned and started walking toward his apartment, looking back to make sure she was following. She was walking just a few steps behind him, her footsteps soft and quiet as they reached his building. Ethan led her upstairs to his small, modest apartment. He offered her a seat on the couch, then quickly went to grab some water. He wasn't sure what to say next. His mind was racing, full of questions about who she was, where she came from, and what had happened to her. The woman sat silently on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She still seemed lost, like she didn't know where she was or what to do next. Ethan could see that she was exhausted, and a part of him wanted to take care of her, make her feel safe. He didn't know why he felt this way, but it was undeniable. He handed her the glass of water, and she took it with a small smile, her eyes meeting his for the first time since they had spoken. It was a brief glance, but Ethan saw the gratitude in her eyes. She didn't speak again for a long time, and he didn't pressure her to. He could tell that she needed time. After a few moments, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you," she said, her eyes downcast. "Know what I would have done if you hadn't come?" Ethan smiled softly. "No problem," he said. "You don't have to thank me. You can stay here as long as you need." There was silence again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. Ethan wasn't sure what the future held for him or for her, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to leave her to face whatever was waiting for her alone. He had no idea who she really was or where she came from, but he was determined to help her, As the night stretched on, Ethan and the woman, who still hadn't told him her name, sat in the quiet apartment. He felt a connection to her, a bond that he couldn't explain. She wasn't just some stranger he had found on the street, she was someone who needed help, and he was going to make sure she got it. Little did Ethan know, this was only the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would change his life and hers forever. The days passed slowly, but Ethan didn't mind. He had always enjoyed peace and quiet, and having the mysterious woman, whom he learned was named Zara, staying with him didn't feel strange, at least not in the way he thought it would. They spent their time getting to know each other, but despite his attempts to ask about her life, Zara remained mostly silent. Ethan didn't want to push her, so he let her take things at her own pace. Zara would wander around the apartment, looking out the window, or sit in the living room, lost in thought. Sometimes she would stare at the sky for hours, her gaze far away. Ethan couldn't help but wonder what was going on in her mind, but he respected her need for space. One evening, as they sat down to eat, Ethan noticed that Zara seemed different. There was something in her eyes, a sadness that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just that she looked lost. She seemed to be carrying something heavy, something she hadn't shared with him. "Zara," Ethan said softly, setting his fork down. "I know you've been through a lot, but you don't have to keep everything inside. You can talk to me if you want. I'm here for you." Zara hesitated, her hands twisting around the edges of her napkin. She glanced at Ethan, her face a mixture of confusion and pain. I don't know how to explain it," she said quietly. "Everything is so strange here, and I don't remember much. My life before is like a fog." Ethan nodded, his heart going out to her. "If you ever feel ready to talk about it, you don't have to do it alone. You've been through something big, I can tell." For a long moment, Zara didn't speak. The silence between them stretched, but Ethan stayed patient, letting her find her words. Finally, she sighed and looked at him with an expression that seemed both resigned and hopeful. "I'm not from here," Zara said slowly, her voice low. "I don't know if I'm even supposed to be here. My planet. My people were destroyed by an empire. The same people who came to Earth before you even knew about them." Ethan's eyes widened in shock. He had suspected she was from somewhere else, but hearing her say it out loud made it real. The empire she spoke of, though, sounded like something out of a science fiction movie. Something he had never imagined would affect his world. "Destroyed?" Ethan asked softly, his mind racing. "What happened to your people?" Zara looked down at the table, her eyes filled with sorrow. "They were taken. The empire took everything. My family, my friends, the land we lived on, they didn't care. They just wanted to control us." Her voice cracked, and she paused to gather herself before continuing. I ran because I had nowhere else to go, but now, I don't know if I can ever go back. I'm the last one." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as he listened to her words. The thought of an entire planet being wiped out by a powerful empire was overwhelming. He couldn't even begin to imagine what that must have been like for Zara, to lose everything. He reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice filled with sympathy. "I can't even imagine what you've been through, but you're safe now. You're not alone anymore." Zara's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she quickly blinked them away. "I don't know if I can believe that," she whispered. "There's always a chance they'll come for me, the Empire. They never stop looking. I'm afraid they'll come for you too." Ethan squeezed her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "If they come, we'll face them together. I'm not afraid to protect you." Zara looked at him, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered. "They have weapons beyond anything you can imagine. You can't fight them." "I don't need weapons," Ethan said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I have something better. I have determination. And I'm not about to let anyone hurt you." For a moment, Zara didn't say anything. She seemed to be studying him, as if trying to figure out if he was telling the truth. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she smiled. It was small, but it was a smile something she hadn't done in days. "Maybe," she said quietly. "Maybe you're right. Maybe there's a chance." Ethan didn't know what was coming, but he knew one thing. For sure, he would do whatever it took to help Zara find peace, even if it meant standing up to an empire. The next day, things started to feel a little different. Zara was quieter than usual, but Ethan noticed a small change in her something. In her eyes that showed a flicker of hope. Aired, still haunted by the memories of her destroyed home and her lost people. But for the first time since she arrived, Zara seemed like she was starting to trust him. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. Later that afternoon, Ethan made a decision. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew he couldn't just wait for things to come to them. They needed to prepare. They needed to learn more about the empire that Zara had fled from and figure out how to stop them. If they could, as he sat down at his computer, Ethan looked over at Zara, who was staring out the window again. He wasn't sure if she was looking at the world or if she was lost in the past. But he knew one thing. They couldn't stay hidden forever. The empire might be searching for her. But Ethan was going to make sure they didn't find her without a fight. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet routine that had settled over Ethan's apartment began to feel less normal and more strained. Zara had become more distant. She no longer spent hours lost in thought. Instead, she wandered around the apartment like a ghost, always on edge. Ethan could feel the tension in the air. He tried to keep things light, but Zara seemed to pull away each day. She was hiding something. He was sure of it. One evening, after a long day of work, Ethan returned home to find Zara sitting on the couch, staring out the window again. The rain had started to fall outside, tapping gently against the glass. It seemed like a peaceful evening, but the unease in the room was thick. "Zara," Ethan called softly as he set his keys down on the table. She didn't answer, but he could tell she had heard him. Her shoulders were tense, her back rigid, and her hands clenched tightly together. There was an invisible wall between them now, one that hadn't been there before. Ethan knew he couldn't let it stay like this. "Hey," he said again this time, with a bit more concern. "Are you okay?" Zara didn't immediately respond. She just stared out the window, her eyes focused on the falling rain. After a few moments, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she said, her words quiet but filled with emotion. "Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces, the soldiers. I hear their voices, calling for me, hunting me." She turned to look at him, her eyes filled with pain. "I'm not safe here. I never will be." Ethan took a step closer, his heart aching for her. He could see how much she was suffering, how the weight of her past was crushing her every day. Zara wasn't just hiding from the empire. She was hiding from herself, from the guilt, the fear, and the memories that wouldn't let her go. "Safe here," Ethan said gently, his voice reassuring. "I promised you that, didn't I? I'm not going to let anything happen to you, not as long as I'm here." But even as he said the words, Ethan could see that Zara didn't believe him. She looked away, her eyes filled with doubt. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaky. "They have things, weapons, ships, technology. They can find me anywhere. It doesn't matter where I go. I'm always going to be hunted." Ethan felt helpless. He wanted to say something that would make her feel better, but he knew that no words would ease the fear that was so deeply rooted inside her. He couldn't even begin to imagine the horrors she had faced. The thought of being hunted, of having your home and your people taken from you, there was no way he could understand that kind of pain. "Then we fight back," Ethan said firmly, surprising himself with his own words. "We don't let them win. We don't hide forever. We do what we have to do to stop them, no matter what." Zara looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You don't know what you're saying. You're just one person. You can't fight them. They're too powerful. The Empire will destroy everything in its path to get what it wants, and I'm part of that path." Ethan could feel his frustration growing. He'd seen her struggle, seen her retreat into herself, and he couldn't stand it anymore. "Zara, don't care what they've done to you," he said, his voice softer now. "You're not just some victim. You're not just someone they can hurt and forget about. You're strong. You have a strength inside you that you don't even know about. Yet, and I believe in you. I believe that you can fight back." Zara's expression softened, just slightly. I've already lost everything, she whispered. What do I have left to fight for? Ethan took another step closer until he was standing right next to her. He reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. You have yourself, he said quietly, and you have me. I'm not going to give up on you. We're going to find a way out of this. Together. For a long time there was nothing but silence between them. The rain continued to fall outside, a soft, steady sound that seemed to match the heavy quiet inside the room. Ethan wasn't sure if his words had made any difference, but he could feel something shift. Zara was still afraid, still carrying the weight of her past. But maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe that she didn't have to carry it alone. Finally, Zara spoke again, her voice low. I'm scared, she admitted, the words almost lost in the quiet. I'm scared that if I try, I'll only make things worse. I've already caused so much pain. What if I make it worse for you too? Ethan shook his head, his grip tightening on her shoulder. You're not alone anymore. You have me, and you have the chance to make things right. We can do this together. I promise you that. Zara turned to face him fully now, her eyes filled with uncertainty. But there was something else in them, to something. That resembled hope. Just a small glimmer, but it was there. Oh, okay, she said softly. I'll try. I'll try to trust you. Ethan smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. That's all I'm asking. As the rain continued to fall, the two of them sat together in silence. But for the first time in weeks, it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was a silence that held a promise. A promise that no matter how difficult the road ahead would be, they would face it together. A week after their conversation, things began to feel different. Zara seemed more at ease, though the weight of her past was still present. To help around the apartment more, even though it wasn't much making meals, organizing things, and just sitting with Ethan as he worked. There was still a quiet tension between them, but it was less than before. She had started to trust him more, and that made a difference. One afternoon, as Ethan was sitting at his desk working, Zara came into the room, her face serious. Ethan, I need to talk to you, she said, her voice low and steady. Ethan looked up from his work, sensing the change in her tone. What's wrong? He asked, his heart skipping a beat. Zara had never sounded so serious before. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, her eyes meeting his. About fighting back. And I think you're right. We can't just hide forever, but we're going to need help. Ethan raised an eyebrow, unsure of where this was going. Help from who? Zara took a deep breath, clearly unsure of how to explain. I have... some connections. People who might be able to help. But they're not the kind of people you'd expect to trust. Ethan sat up straighter, his curiosity piqued. What do you mean? Who are these people? Zara hesitated, glancing around as if making sure no one else could hear. They're part of a group of humans who have been tracking the Empire for years. They're the ones who've been watching, keeping secrets, gathering information. They've known about the Empire's plans before anyone else. Ethan frowned. Why haven't they contacted us before? They work in the shadows, Zara explained. They keep their distance to avoid drawing attention. They don't trust anyone easily, and they don't like making themselves known. But they're the only ones who might know how to stop the Empire, Ethan thought for a moment. The idea of contacting a secret group sounded risky, but it was the only lead they had. So how do we get in touch with them? Zara seemed to consider this for a moment before she nodded. I know where they are. I've been in contact with one of them before, but they won't come to us. We'll need to go to them. Ethan stood up, determination setting into his expression. Then we'll go. We'll do whatever it takes to get their help. Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt. Are you sure about this? These people. They don't trust Isley. They might not even want to help. I'm sure, Ethan replied, his voice steady. We don't have any other choice. If they can help, we need to find them. The next day, Ethan and Zara set out to meet this mysterious group. Zara led the way, taking them through quiet streets, down alleyways, and into parts of the city that Ethan had never seen before. They were careful, making sure they weren't followed, staying out of sight. Ethan's heart raced. It was strange to feel like a stranger in his own city, walking through hidden parts that were unfamiliar and unknown. Eventually, they reached a small, unmarked door at the back of a building. Zara knocked twice, then waited. Ethan stood beside her, his nerves building. After a long moment, the door creaked open, revealing a man in his late 30s. His face was stern, but his eyes softened when he saw Zara. "Zara," the man said quietly, stepping aside to let them in. "I wasn't expecting you." Zara nodded, stepping inside, and Ethan followed. The room was small but well organized, with maps and notes spread out on a large table. It felt like the kind of place where secrets were kept. People worked in silence to uncover the truth. "This is Ethan," Zara said, introducing him. "He's helping me. We need your help." The man studied Ethan for a moment before nodding. "I'm Alex," he said, shaking Ethan's hand. "I know who you are. Zara told me about you. But if you're going to be involved in this, you need to understand that it's dangerous. Can't go back once you've seen what we're doing." Ethan nodded without hesitation. "I'm ready." "We're ready." Alex didn't say anything for a moment, but then he gestured toward the table. "Take a look at this," he said, pointing to a large map. It was marked with symbols and notes in a language Ethan didn't recognize. "This is where the Empire has been operating. We've tracked them to several locations, but we've never been able to get close enough to stop them." Ethan studied the map, feeling the weight of what they were facing. It was much bigger than anything he had imagined. The Empire wasn't just a group of invaders, it was an organization with a vast network, and they were far from done. Zara stood next to him, her expression hardening as she looked at the map. "We need to destroy them. We can't just keep running. We have to stop them before they find us again." Alex nodded. "That's the goal, but we can't do it alone. We need more people, more resources, and more information. If you're in this, you need to be prepared to fight for something bigger than yourself." Ethan looked at Zara, who nodded at him, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. "Ready," Ethan said, his voice firm. "We won't stop until they're gone." Alex studied him for a long moment before finally speaking. "All right, I'll help you. But know this. Once you join us, there's no turning back. You'll be fighting not just for Zara, but for every world the Empire has taken." Ethan looked at Zara, then back at Alex. "We understand." As they sat down to discuss their next steps, Ethan realized that everything had changed. They were no longer just two people hiding from the Empire. They were now part of something much bigger, a fight to stop the Empire before it could destroy everything. The road ahead would be difficult. But Ethan knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let Zara fight alone. Together, they would take on the Empire and fight for a future where no one had to live in fear. The plan had been set, and there was no turning back now. Ethan, Zara, and Alex were deep in preparations. They had joined forces with the secret group of humans, and the stakes were higher than ever. Zara's fear of the Empire was real, but she was ready to fight. Ethan could see the determination in her eyes, and for the first time since he had met her, she seemed to have hope. Together, they were about to face a battle that would change everything. It had been days of planning and gathering information. Alex and the other members of the group had spent years tracking the Empire, learning its moves and understanding its weaknesses. The Empire had a massive fleet, but they were not invincible. There were cracks in the Empire's armor, and Ethan and Zara's group were going to find them. They stood in the hidden room, surrounded by maps and blueprints. The air was thick with tension as everyone prepared for the mission ahead. Ethan's mind raced with thoughts of what was to come. This wasn't just about protecting Zara anymore. This was about stopping the Empire from destroying more lives, more planets. "We move tonight," Alex said, his voice steady and calm. "This is the best chance we have. The Empire will be distracted by other operations. This is when we strike." Ethan nodded. "What's the target?" Alex pointed to a location. "On the map, a supply base. It's heavily guarded, but we know it's vulnerable. If we hit it hard and fast, we can cause enough damage to cripple their operation. They'll think we're just a small group, but we'll show them what we're capable of." Zara stood next to Ethan, her face hard with resolve. "I've trained for this," she said quietly, I'm ready. Ethan looked at her, worried but proud. She was still the same woman who had been lost and afraid when she arrived, but now she was a fighter. She had come a long way, and he knew that this mission was as much about her healing as it was about stopping the Empire. "Hey, we're in this together," Ethan said, his voice firm. The night was dark as they made their way to the outskirts of the city, where the secret group's vehicles were waiting. The plan was simple: infiltrate the supply base, sabotage the Empire's equipment, and escape. Before they had a chance to retaliate, the operation was dangerous, but it was the only way to send a message to the Empire that humans weren't as weak as they thought. Zara, Alex, and Ethan moved quickly, blending into the shadows as they approached the base. The air was thick with the sound of distant engines and the low hum of security systems. They stayed close to the walls, avoiding the patrolling guards. Zara led the way, her movements precise and calm. Ethan could see the determination in her every step, and it reminded him of why he was doing this. He wasn't just fighting for her. He was fighting for every human, every alien who had ever been oppressed by the Empire. They reached the main entrance of the supply base, a large steel door guarded by 2 armed soldiers. Zara and Alex exchanged a quick look. Without a word, Alex moved to the left, while Zara and Ethan took the right. With quiet, practiced movements, they approached the guards. In the blink of an eye, Alex had neutralized one, and Zara had taken out the other. It was quick and silent. No one was alerted. "Let's go," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. They moved swiftly through the base, planting explosives on key systems and sabotaging anything they could find. Ethan's heart was racing, but he kept his focus. They had to finish the mission and get out before the Empire realized what was happening. As they worked, the sound of distant alarms suddenly filled the air. The Empire had noticed something was wrong. The countdown had begun. They had only minutes before the entire base would be on high alert. "Move, move, move," Alex shouted, his voice sharp. They rushed toward the exit, but as they turned a corner, they were met by a group of heavily armed soldiers. The odds were against them, but Ethan wasn't afraid. He looked at Zara and saw the same fire in her eyes that he had seen earlier. She was ready. They were ready. The first soldier fired, and chaos erupted. Zara ducked behind a nearby crate, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Ethan followed her lead, his heart pounding in his chest. The sounds of gunfire filled the air, and for a moment it felt like the world was spinning. But he stayed focused. He knew what was at stake. Alex, who had moved to the other side of the room, threw a smoke grenade into the middle of the fight. The thick cloud of smoke created a moment of confusion, and they used it to their advantage. Zara and Ethan moved quickly, taking out the remaining soldiers with precision. They didn't have time to waste. As the smoke cleared, they made their way to the exit, their bodies tense and alert. They could hear the sounds of reinforcements rushing to the base, but they were already too far ahead. "We did it," Zara said, her breath heavy with adrenaline. Ethan looked around, his heart still racing. "Not yet. We need to get out of here." The 3 of them sprinted toward their escape vehicle, their footsteps echoing in the still night. As they climbed into the vehicle, Ethan looked back at the base they had just destroyed. The Empire's grip was weakening, but they weren't done yet. They still had a long way to go. As the vehicle sped away, Ethan looked at Zara. She was smiling, the weight of her past finally starting to lift. She had fought back, and in that moment she had found the strength she had been looking for. The battle was far from over. But Ethan knew one thing for sure. They had just taken the first step toward victory. The mission had been a success. The supply base was destroyed, and the Empire had taken a heavy blow. It wasn't just about the physical damage. They had made a statement. They had shown the Empire that humans, and those who were willing to fight for a better future, were not to be underestimated. But as much as the victory was sweet, the reality of what lay ahead hit harder. The Empire would not stop. It was only a matter of time before they struck back. Ethan, Zara, and Alex sat in the safe house, the atmosphere heavy with quiet determination. The news of their success had spread quickly, and the Empire had started to regroup. Zara, who had been so quiet for the past few days, was now pacing around the small room. Her mind was clearly racing, and Ethan could see the uncertainty that still lingered in her eyes. "I can't shake this feeling," she said, her voice low. "This might have been a small victory, but we're only a target now. They'll come for us harder than before." Ethan watched her, his expression serious. He understood her fear. The Empire wasn't just going to sit back and let them continue. They would strike with everything they had, and they would come for Zara first. But they had to keep fighting. They couldn't let fear stop them. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But we have to stay focused. The first step is done, and now we need to plan for the next one." Zara stopped, pacing, and turned to him. "I want to fight," she said, her eyes fierce. "I've been running for too long. I'm done hiding." Alex, who had been studying the map spread out in front of them, looked up. "We all want to fight," he said, "but we need to be smart. The Empire has more resources than we do. If we're going to keep pushing forward, we need to build our forces. We need more allies." Zara's eyes narrowed. "And where do we find those allies?" she asked. Alex pointed to a new section of the map. "We have contacts in several other places, groups that have been fighting against the Empire for years. Some are isolated, others are well organized. We need to reach out to them, make connections, and build a stronger force." Ethan nodded. It wasn't just about the two of them anymore. The fight had become bigger than any one person. It was about uniting people, showing them that they didn't have to live in fear. There was a whole universe out there, and they were not the only ones oppressed by the Empire's reach. "We'll do whatever it takes," Ethan said firmly. "We'll find these people, and we'll convince them to join us." Over the next few weeks, their mission expanded. Ethan, Zara, and Alex traveled to several different locations, meeting with leaders of resistance groups. Some were small, hiding in the shadows, while others were larger, with more resources. Some of the leaders were hesitant, unsure if they could trust strangers who had just destroyed an Empire supply base. But Zara, more confident than ever, spoke to them with passion, telling them her story and urging them to join the fight. Slowly, the resistance grew. They formed alliances with other planets, other species who had also suffered under the Empire's rule. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, times when they didn't know if they would succeed, but they kept pushing forward, step by step. Every new ally made them stronger, and every victory, no matter how small, gave them hope. One day, after a long trip to a distant planet, they returned to the safe house to find a surprise waiting for them. A small group of people, human and alien, had arrived, ready to join their cause. They were the first to answer the call for help, and their arrival marked a new chapter in the fight. The resistance was no longer just a few people. It was starting to look like an army. Zara stood at the front, her face filled with determination. "This is just the beginning," she said to the new arrivals. "We have a long road ahead of us, but together, we will win. We will show the Empire that they can't control us, so that we are not just victims, but a force to be reckoned with." The group cheered, and Ethan felt a surge of pride. They'd come so far, but they weren't done yet. The Empire was still out there, and they were going to stop it no matter what. As they sat down to discuss their next moves, Ethan and Zara found a quiet moment alone. They stood by the window, looking out at the stars. The weight of the fight ahead was heavy, but for the first time in a long time, Zara looked at peace. "I never thought I'd be here," she said quietly. "Never thought I'd be fighting back. I never thought I'd have people who cared about me again." Ethan smiled, his eyes soft. "You're not alone anymore. We've got each other, and we've got a whole group of people who are counting on us." Zara turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I know," she said. "I'm not going to let them down. I won't hide anymore. I'm ready for whatever comes next." Ethan nodded. "We all are. Together, we'll make sure the Empire knows that we're not afraid." The fight wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. But now they weren't alone. They had a team. They had allies. They had hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but Ethan knew that with Zara by his side. And the strength of their growing resistance, They had a real chance to defeat the Empire and bring peace to the galaxy. The days had turned into weeks, and the weeks had turned into months. The resistance had grown stronger with every passing day. Ethan, Zara, and Alex had become leaders, guiding the new alliance of humans and aliens who were now united in their fight against the Empire. Their mission was clear: to bring down the Empire and free every world it had enslaved. The planning had been intense, with every detail of their strategy carefully mapped out. But as they prepared for the final strike, Ethan couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and fear. The end of the war was near, but the cost would be high. They all knew it, but they were ready. They had to be. Zara had changed too. The woman who had once been afraid to trust, afraid to fight, was now a fierce leader. She stood tall, her shoulders straight, her voice steady as she spoke to their allies. The woman who had once felt lost had found her place among the stars, and she had found her strength, not just in herself, but in the people around her. Ethan stood next to her, watching. As she spoke to the group, he had always known she was strong, but seeing her lead with confidence filled him with pride. They had been through so much together, and now they were on the brink of something even greater. They had a chance to change everything to free the galaxy from the Empire's grip. As Zara finished speaking, she turned to Ethan, her face softening. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with emotion. Ethan smiled, his heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. "I've been ready for a long time," he said, "and I'm not going to stop until it's over." Zara reached out and took his hand, her grip firm. "We've come so far, we've lost so much, but we've gained so much too. This is our moment, Ethan. Together we can do this." Ethan squeezed her hand in return, feeling a rush of warmth. "I'll be by your side, always." The final battle was set to take place on the Empire's homeworld, the heart of their power. It would be a fight unlike any other. The Resistance had gathered their forces, ships, weapons, and soldiers from all corners of the galaxy. It was a united front, and they had one goal: to bring the Empire to its knees. The journey to the Empire's homeworld was long and dangerous, but they made it. Their fleet was small compared to the Empire's, but they were fueled by determination and the will to survive. As they approached the planet, the tension among the crew was palpable. Everyone knew the risks. Everyone knew that this could be the last battle, but they didn't flinch. They were ready. Ethan stood beside Zara on the bridge of their flagship, his eyes focused on the massive planet below. It was a dark, foreboding place, a symbol of everything the Empire had done to the galaxy. But Ethan didn't feel fear. He felt something stronger, hope, and the thought that, no matter what happened, they were doing the right thing. "We're almost there," Zara said, her voice steady as she stood next to him. "This is it. No turning back now." Ethan nodded. "We do this, and we make sure no one else has to live under the Empire's rule ever again." Hyperspace and the final battle began. The Empire was ready for them, but they were not prepared for what the Resistance had become. The humans and aliens fought side by side, their ships weaving through the chaos of space, attacking with precision and strength. Zara was at the helm of the flagship, guiding their forces with the calm leadership she had honed over the months of fighting. Ethan was right by her side, commanding his own squadron, flying through the storm of enemy fire. Every maneuver was carefully planned, every decision made with purpose. The battle was fierce, but with each victory, the Empire's forces grew weaker. The Resistance had the advantage. They knew the Empire's weaknesses, and they used that knowledge to their full advantage. As the battle raged on, Zara and Ethan finally found themselves face to face with the Empire's leader, the one who had started it all. It was a moment they had both been waiting for, but neither of them had expected it to be this difficult. The leader was ruthless, powerful, and determined to keep his grip on the galaxy. But Zara, with Ethan by her side, wasn't going to back down. "You've lost," Zara said, her voice unwavering as she stood before the Empire's leader. "This is over. The galaxy will be free." The leader sneered, his arrogance evident. "You think you can defeat me? I've built an empire. You're nothing." Zara stepped forward, her eyes locked on him. "We're everything. We're the people you tried. to destroy, and we're the ones who will bring you down. With one final strike, the Empire's leader was defeated, and the Empire began to crumble. The final victory was theirs. The galaxy was free. As they stood on the battlefield, surrounded by their allies, Zara and Ethan found a moment of quiet. Amid the chaos, the fight was over. The war was won, and they had done it together. Zara turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We did it," she whispered. Ethan smiled, his heart full. "No, we did it together." They stood there, side by side, knowing that the galaxy had changed. They had given everything to ensure a better future, and now they had it. They had each other, and they had a chance to build something new. Zara looked up at the stars, a sense of peace settling over her. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "There's so much more to rebuild, but we'll do it together." Ethan took her hand, smiling as they looked out at the galaxy before them, together, always.